course of the last several days, we've been able to add to our program forwards Riley Nash, Nick Foligno, Stefan Nason, Antti Suomela, defenseman Ben Hutton, and goaltender David Rittich. We're obviously excited to be able to add those players to our group and have them join the group as soon as possible. From my end, I felt that the group of players and coaches had deserved every effort on our end, on management, to bolster the team and try to give us as great a chance as possible down the stretch in our division and into the playoffs. So we were excited to be able to, we believe, add the pieces that will continue to enhance our ability to be as competitive as possible as we go into the playoffs and roll from there. So at this point, I'll turn it over for any questions.
First up, we'll go to Terry Cochet, Toronto Sun. Go ahead, Terry.
Hey, Kyle, good afternoon. To what extent were you able to satisfy the pieces that you were looking for then? I know, I think there are probably some great expectations for Nick Foligno and what he can bring to your lineup, but everywhere else, are you, what level of satisfaction have you able to add what you wanted?
Well, I think, Terry, one of the things that's our view of what we've needed has changed as different players have stepped up and different players have developed over the year and different guys have jumped into roles and excelled, and then injuries influence matters as well and sort of shift your focus onto different areas of the roster. But certainly Alex Galchenyuk's rise to prominence on our roster had altered a little bit of what we were looking for and really let us focus up front on the thing that I really felt that we needed from the beginning, which was to try to find a player that could play up and down our lineup that had tremendous character, competitiveness, defensive responsibility, but also had skill and ability to play with any of our top three lines. So that was accomplished with Nick. Sheldon and I have talked from the summer about adding a defensively responsible right-handed center, and Riley Nash accomplished that for us. And then we shifted our focus to goaltending and with the situation here, as we've lived the whole year with the injuries at different times to Jack and Fred, I think the one thing we didn't want to do was get down the stretch here and get into the playoffs and regret not bolstering it, which is why we elected to move with David Rittich with Calgary, and then today just shoring up our depth on defense with Ben Hutton. So we're content with the way that things have gone, and obviously we expended a lot of draft capital to make it happen, and that'll place pressure on the organization elsewhere. But I think coming off the draft that we just had, where we had a lot of picks and the early returns we feel have been promising. We have to obviously continue to develop those players, but we felt that gave us a little bit of flexibility here in the last couple of days to get to work and try to improve the team in those areas.
I know the last time we talked to you, you had spoken of the idea of, a top prospect being on the table if that was to come to that. How happy are you that you didn't have to go down that route here in these last 48 hours or so?
One of the major things, Terry, that we were trying to do if we could was get through the deadline with the group intact. I think in terms, the players could answer this better, but just in my observation, it's one of the tightest knit groups we've had. And I think the spirit and the vibe of the team is very, very good. So I didn't want to take anybody out of that. And if we had to choose between our prospects and draft capital, of course, you're just trying to make an objective assessment. But the players that we have in here, they're already known people and players and athletes to us. So we know what we have in them, and we know what their work ethic is like and their habits are like and where they are developmentally. And in the case of all those players, and we could argue about who's an A and who's a B, and I'll leave that to you all to do that. We were hopeful to get through the deadline without having to move any of them and just continue to develop them. So it's nice to get through it. It wasn't an absolute non-starter for us, but we're excited that we get through the deadline with those prospects still a part of our system.
Next up, we'll go to Mark Masters, TSN. Go ahead, Mark.
Kyle, what clarity do you have on what Frederik Andersen is going through right now and when he might be available to return for you guys?
Yeah, the situation with Fred is really not changed. I think Fred's carried a tremendous load for us over the last 4.5 seasons, and our main ambition with Fred now is obviously he played last on March 19th, and with that said, and with the season where it's at, with about 4 weeks to go, patience and making sure that he's at 100% is the key for us, Mark. So that's really all that we're focused on at this point, is making sure that we get through the stretch and give him the chance to be at absolute 100% and be ready to roll come playoff time. He's a huge important part of what we do here, and we wanted to bolster that position. But when it comes down to it, in the end, the goaltenders that have been here are the ones that have led us to this, and this was done to support them and help them and support the group overall. But when it comes to Fred, we're just continuing to focus on getting him 100% healthy and being ready to roll for us the most important time of year.
What stands out the most to you about Nick Foligno's game that made him worth what you gave up?
Well, there's a few things. I think number one, you know what you're going to get from Nick every single night. And in Terry's question, he said the expectations will be high. Our expectations are just that he comes in and does everything that he's done in his career in Ottawa and Columbus. The way that he plays every single night that you can rely upon in terms of his effort level, his work rate, and his responsibility defensively, able to play against anybody in the league, able to kill penalties at a high level, and most importantly, able to make plays when he has the puck. And I think the energy and the grit that he brings to a team is infectious within the group. If you talk to players and coaches that have had him before, and just the character that he has, which in talking to people and when you're gearing up to do these things, one of the more important things for us was that the people who are coming into the room were going to be able to fit into what we're doing and become a great part of it and enhance something that we feel is already a really good thing happening. And it was all positive on that end with Nick. So on and off the ice, those are the things that we're expecting from him, which is just what he's done for his whole career in the NHL.
Next up, we'll go to Luke Fox at Sportsnet. Go ahead, Luke.
Hi, Kyle. What made Ben Hutton an attractive defenseman to try and add?
I think the thing, Luke, with Ben, when he was in the summer of 2019, when he was available, when he signed with LA, we had investigated signing him. We made trades in that off season that brought in two defensemen, Cody Ceci and Tyson Barrie, and so that was sort of what we went with at that point. And we also were having Travis Dermott come back early in the year, and we didn't want to block him out. Coming back off injury 2019-20. So Ben had been on our radar, and we watched him last year in LA and then this year in Anaheim, and just think he's able to play up and down the lineup. Last year with LA, a strong run of games with Drew Doughty, and able to come in, kill penalties, and play that sort of role. We felt in terms of depth, we have a lot of guys that can come in and play on the power play and play more offensive minutes. We just wanted to bolster what we had defensively, and we feel that over his career he's done that. So that was what led us to Ben and wanted us to move down that path with him and welcome him from Anaheim to Toronto.
Do you think he can compete for a roster spot immediately?
He'll be on the roster, so
lineup spot.
Well, I mean, he's going to have to serve the quarantine and get through that and then be ready to roll. But I'm not naive. I think we've been very fortunate with our health on the blue line, and we obviously hope that continues. But we also hope that we continue to work guys in here as the season comes down the stretch, and give a little bit of life to guys that have sort of been in and out or getting some games with the Marlies, like Brinson, Liljegren. Once Sandin gets healthy, hopefully we can work Rasmussen as well. But I would expect that Ben will compete with the group, and if he wins the spot, that's great for him and great for our depth.
We'll go to Jonas Siegel, The Athletic. Go ahead, Jonas.
Hey, Kyle, how would you say your stance or approach to the trade deadline has changed over the years or evolved?
Well, it's when I first started here the first year working with Dave Nonis, we were a seller, and then the first year with Lou we were a seller, and then the second year with Lou and just watching him and the way he operated, he felt that the team had earned the ability for us to go out and get something. We added Brian Boyle the next year, Thomas Buchanitz, and then in the previous 2 years we tried to act a little early, and it just wasn't really available this year. As you all saw, we added Muzzin and Campbell and Clifford in the previous 2 years. They were a month out, so it just had to evolve in terms of the comfortability of getting close to the deadline. And I think honestly, Jonas, the players and coaches made that the way that they operate every day, and I think especially the way that the team came out of playing poorly there in the early part of March really made me comfortable with what we have and what we have going here in terms of their ability to withstand and deal with times when maybe our form hasn't been the best. And it just, the way that the locker room operates made me a little bit more comfortable in getting closer to the deadline before we did anything. And I just think that the way that the group has played this year, the way that they've operated this year, that's made me more comfortable in adding pieces, which you would commonly refer to as rentals, to our group.
And then as far as Frederick goes, when do you expect him to get back on the ice?
I think once the medical team gives him the green light to get back on the ice, that's when he'll be there. I mean, our goal, as I think it was Mark who asked the question. Our goal is to just make sure he's 100% healthy here, to be at his best when the team is going to need him the most come playoff time. So I don't have a definitive timeline on it, and I think for everything that Fred's done for the organization for 4.5 years, as I've said to him many times, our focus on this is patience and making sure he's back at 100% and not really putting a huge amount of pressure on him to do that. And that's really why we went out and got Rittich to be able to come in here with Jack and Hutch and form that a really solid kind of threesome of goaltenders before Fred gets rolling.
Next up, we'll go to Josh Clipperton, Canadian Press. Go ahead, Josh.
Hey, Kyle. Yesterday was pretty busy across the league, and from afar, today seemed quieter. I'm just wondering what this deadline was like compared to other ones you've been involved with, considering the quarantine, the flat cap, only playing within your division, and just maybe some teams not knowing exactly what they have.
Yeah, I haven't seen the total number of trades today, Josh, so I can't answer it definitively. I felt like once we had completed the two last trades, the Hutton and Suomela deals late in the day today, it just felt a little bit quieter, but it's so hard to speak for what was happening with the other 30 clubs. I think there's a number of factors that may influence what you're referring to. I think expansion coming up, the flat cap, and the fact that even if you may be a little bit out of the playoffs or you're not in the position you want to be in, you probably look ahead and see games against those teams on your schedule and think if you can win those games, you'll improve your lot in the current standing. So I think all those things serve to combine to maybe reduce the amount of activity. It didn't feel that way to me today, but our situation was one in which we were looking to add and in the mix on a lot of things. So I can only speak from our end, and I don't want to unfairly characterize the other clubs and what they were going through.
Yeah, no worries. In terms of the reduction of the quarantine from 14 days to 7 days, did that help in terms of, I'm sure Nick's a guy that's in tremendous shape, but sitting around 14 days compared to 7 days at 33 is a big difference. Did that help justify?
I think so, for sure. I mean, if the way that we looked at it is that, obviously the players are coming in and the protocols that they're under during those 7 days are daily testing. It's twice daily or two types of tests here. So we have that on the go, and they're, bound to their home like anybody traveling in. And then the other days they're like all of our players now, and like most people in Ontario, it's for them, they've come to the rink and then go home and that's it. So, there's not a whole lot to do, and it feels very safe that way. But if it had gone to the 14 days, I think that really would have put us in all the Canadian teams, all 7 teams, in a more difficult spot, because if you acquired a player today, by the time they organize, especially in a situation like Nick with a family and 3 children, you need a couple of days to kind of get organized. Then you're coming 14 days and in the hotel for 14 days. So, that would have been till April 27th, and you don't have a whole lot of games and practices to get up and running before playoffs. So I think it certainly would have been reflected in the price we would have been willing to pay, more so if we came down to today, but probably would have expedited things a little bit sooner in terms of the deadline and when we were looking to do things.
We'll take 4 more here. We'll go to Mike Zeisberger, NHL.com. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, Kyle, given some of the moves that you made during the off season and the ones you've made now, is this the most versatile team, at least potentially, that you've had in terms of you can play wide open, you can play tight defensively, you can play physical? There just seems to be so many layers of the team right now, and like I said, in terms of versatility.
I think it's just trying to learn from the way that things have gone poorly in the past number of years, Mike. And like in all of the 4 seasons we've been in the playoffs or the playoff qualifiers in my time here. So the series against Washington, the 2 Boston series and the Columbus series, just trying to learn that, trying to learn how we can better get through the regular season without different lulls. And we've talked about that going back to before the season and the importance we were placing on the regular season and why that is so vital to setting us up. And one of the things we talked about in the off season was we just felt that and we needed to become more versatile with the roster. We needed to add better experience and guys with more spirit and energy. And now it's just trying to take the year and find what may be missing. But certainly when we get into the playoffs, Mike, I think we're going to need all of those elements that you talked about, the defensive play, the goal scoring, and the toughness. It's going to be harder to score goals. It's going to be harder to defend, and the games are going to become far more physical. So we've tried to address that going back, really going back to adding Muzz 2 years ago, and Kyle Clifford last year, and Bogosian in the offseason, and Simmons in the offseason, Foligno today, even Stefan Nason here leading up to the deadline in the same deal as Nick Foligno and Riley Nash on the defensive side. So we're trying to get ready for anything. I don't think it can ever be perfect because you don't know the opponents, you don't know where we're at. I think our main focus right now is just using these remaining games and getting as ready as we possibly can. For one, locking ourselves into a playoff spot and getting in first, and then locking ourselves into as good a position we can within the division and rolling from there. But I think once we get through into this final stretch, we play Montreal a lot. We've got another 4 games left against Winnipeg. It's going to be a strong test down the stretch for us as well. That I'm looking forward to seeing how the group responds. But once we get there, if we can take care of business here, it'll be about using all of those elements that you mentioned to be at our best. And we think we've addressed some of the deficiencies we've had, and more will come up, and it'll be up to us to address them internally here through development and coaching and accountability for the rest of the way.
You've always been complimentary of Brandon Pridham, and rightly so, but that was even before we had a flat cap. That was before, you're not getting revenues from fans coming into the building. I mean, does this guy deserve a Hart Trophy for capologists, what he's been able to do?
Oh, don't tell him that. It's tough to really put into words what it's like to work with Brandon, and the ideas that he comes up with, the just the information he's able to give me to make my job as easy as possible, and his ability to challenge me or tell me when he thinks we're going down a path that might not be best, and really optimize our roster, our cap space, all the different things that we're doing. He works tirelessly at it, and I can't imagine. I mean, we've been here basically the whole time together, about a month difference, and the amount that I learned from him and the value that he has to the organization and to everybody in management, it's tough to put into words, Mike, and we're just extraordinarily thankful to have him, and I couldn't imagine, it would be really tough to imagine doing the job without him, and he's an indispensable part of the group, and I've never worked with anybody else in that realm. I know, like, here in Montreal they have John Sedgwick, he's excellent as well, but and I think all of us who do this job, without having someone of that caliber in that role, you're definitely shorthanded. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate Brandon on this call. So, but whatever awards there are for that position, I would certainly think he should win them.
We'll take 3 more here. We'll go to Lance Hornby, Toronto Sun. Go ahead, Lance.
Hi, Kyle. In adding Nick, that's the 4th former captain, including John Tavares, that you've added to your leadership group. Certainly, he impressed a lot of us last night on his conference call. Can you talk about adding just another voice there? And also, even if Joe Thornton's playing time might be reduced a little with these moves, his contributions still to be made to the team, do you think?
Yeah, I think in terms of the leadership aspect, Lance, I don't think you can ever have enough guys who possess leadership. And you talk about the 4 players that, John is the captain, Joe, Jason, and Nick have been captains. Nick as recently as yesterday. I also think there's a group forming here of players who could be captain. You never know how things are going to work out, but they certainly could fill that role. And I think we're really, really fortunate with the different styles of leadership we have within the group as well. Like Jake Muzzin brings a lot in terms of leadership. He's very different than Zach Hyman, who brings a lot in terms of leadership. Mitch and Austin are continuing to evolve, and you have Morgan as well, and it's just, I think we're very fortunate to have the caliber of character people that are here, and it makes it very, very easy to work and manage, and I know from Sheldon's, and coach them, because they hold each other accountable and they call each other out on different things, and especially the younger guys are starting to continue to mature into that. So having examples for them to follow as we really get rolling with this thing, and those players start to enter their prime, I think is invaluable to the growth of the program and of the club. With regards to Joe's playing time or anybody's playing time, I think we've got so much to work through here with different quarantines and different things of that nature. What I could tell you about Joe is he is the exact same every day, regardless of what his position is. He's come here for a reason, I think, which he stated repeatedly, and is willing to do whatever it is on and off the ice to help the club get there at this stage in his career. So, even when his playing time isn't what it has been in the past, has no impact on Joe's energy and who he is each day. And I think that's been just wonderful for our entire group to see.
Last two here, we'll go to Joshua Cloak, The Athletic. Go ahead, Josh.
Hey, Kyle, understanding that it's not the focus of the day, but with this KHL season finished, what's the organization's plan for Rodion Amarov this season?
Yeah, our plan this season, it's a bit of a challenging one because he's not signed yet. So when signing a Russian player, the especially one who's in Russia, it's a challenge. Reed Mitchell on our staff deals with all this and does an incredible job of trying to get the players a Canadian visa, and especially during a pandemic, it's been even more complicated. But our plan right now is to try to continue to work with Dan and with UFA and see if we can get Rodion over to North America. Unlike other years, he hasn't even been here yet. The draft was in October. Their season was rolling along. I think we were really happy with how his season went overall and thought UFA did a really good job, especially with such a young player, of bringing him along. He had the great tournament at the Cariala Cup. He had some ups and downs at the World Juniors, and then they really did a good job, I felt, developing him there, especially as a young player. So our plan is to try to get him over and in and around our people as soon as we can, Josh. But we'll work with Dan Milstein and UFA on that here. Now that we're through the deadline, that'll be where our focus gets shifted to.
I think a lot has been made of the fact that you guys have just 6 draft picks over the next 2 drafts. Does the fact that, there's been less teams playing, scouting maybe has been a little bit more difficult this time around, does that factor into your decision to trade as many draft picks?
No, I don't think so, Josh. I think our main, you never hope to get to that point where you have so few draft picks, but we're coming out of a draft where we had a surplus of draft picks. And I think seeing those players develop through their seasons respectively has been very encouraging for us. I think everybody's always happy with the way their draft went, especially so recently, but we've been especially happy with the way that the players have performed going back from October through to now. So that just made me a little bit more comfortable knowing that we've got those players coming into the system. We've got more players coming into the system from previous drafts that are going to be over here starting next year. And then we signed Alex Steves from Notre Dame a few weeks ago. That just gave me a little bit more comfort. And, how it stands now may not be how it stands as we get to the draft. But I also think that, given the uncertainty of this draft and the fact that, leagues have been going in fits and starts, predominantly in North America, I would think that it would make our program a good landing spot for any undrafted players or draft-related free agents as well. So we'll shift our focus there. And I know John Lilly and the scouting staff, they've done for my money, they've done a great job. And so I'm thankful for them and believe that they'll make the most of those picks. And, we'll also shift our focus to being really competitive on the tryout front and free agent front and try to maximize our ability there.
And last one here, we'll go to Steve Simmons, Toronto Sun. Go ahead, Steve.
Kyle, you lost Jake Muzzin in last year's playdowns, and Colorado lost goalies in last year's playdowns. How much did those kind of moves convince you that you needed to up your depth both on defense and in goal today?
That's a good question, Steve. The way that I have sort of looked at it, rightly or wrongly, is that I don't want this season for the group to come down to injuries or issues of depth or anything like that. And it's hockey, it's competitive. The schedule is going to be very compressed. It might, but I thought that the group had done such a strong job so far during the season, the way that they've played, the way that they've acted on and off the ice. And I looked at my job to try to make sure that they had every chance possible to see it through, whatever that outcome may be in the end. And so when we got together and looked at it, it was trying to accomplish a number of things in goal, on defense, and up front, so that no matter who gets injured or who goes out, that we do have. You're never going to be able to replace a Jake Muzzin when he goes out, and you're never going to be able to fully replace you referenced Colorado. When your starting goaltender goes out, and in their case, when two of them go out, you're never able to fully, I think, fill in for those players. But in order to build the greatest chance we have so that those types of things don't derail a season, we wanted to make sure that we were as covered as possible. And so I think things that happen always influence the way that you behave. And certainly the way that we acted this year, we tried to act was just, how do we ensure that different things that may happen don't cost the team? And if we're going to give ourselves the best chance to have success, because we all know as we go down the stretch and into the playoffs, different things are going to happen. Injuries are going to happen. Different players are going to step up. Other guys are going to maybe have a dip in their form. And we just wanted to have the locker room and Sheldon have as many options as possible to remain as competitive as possible.
And to go back to Freddie for just a moment, are you completely convinced that he will be back playing for the Leafs in this regular season?
I'm convinced that Freddie's going to play for the Leafs for sure, Steve. Whether it's here in the next number of weeks or whether that's in the playoffs, that will be up to the medical staff and Fred to decide. It's a different year this year, and that I think Jack he's been outstanding. There's no other way to put it since he's come in. So I think all that does, and in talking to Fred over the last number of days, I think Fred is rooting for Jack, and it takes the pressure off him. Whereas in the past, and there was always a pressure on Fred to play a lot and to come back as soon as possible from every injury. Now with Jack playing the way he has, and with Dave coming in, it'll allow us to be slow and cautious with Fred and make sure he's absolutely at 100%. And for once from our end, do right by Fred for someone who's done so much for the organization. And that includes it from his end, really pushing himself to play a lot of games and pushing himself to come back from injury as soon as possible, rather than perhaps when he's always ready. So I think we owe that to Fred, and that's the way we're going to handle it.
Thanks, Kyle.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. That concludes this availability. We'll see everyone tonight. Have a great day.